how difficult those cars are to drive, do they? They are
I do.
properly technical things to drive. Hello and welcome to the Collecting Addicts podcast, episode number 28. I'm looking very bronze because I've been in Ibiza. Where hey, party, yeah. I'm sitting in a BMW M2 in a car park in Bala, North Wales, because I walked into a hotel and asked if they had a room for 2 hours with good internet, and they didn't let me in. So here we are this week. First of all, we're going to discuss the F1 at the weekend. The Hungaroring, which is known for no overtaking and being a circuit at which Lewis Hamilton has dominated for a long, long time. Chris Cooper, tell me what you thought of the race.
Well, it reminded me, given the total domination of Red Bull, of a quote that I first heard when I was very, very young. Now the whole world knows because of the Oppenheimer film. And the quote goes like this: "We knew the world would not be the same. A few people laughed, a few people cried, most people were silent." I remembered the line from Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita: "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Yakida Bala." Of course, the quote everyone now knows from Robert Oppenheimer, but I like to think that earlier in the year, those are the words of Adrian Newey when he saw the performance of the RB19. I mean, it's a killing machine. It's an absolute killing machine. So this weekend, they broke the record of most consecutive wins, which the MP4 had held from 1988, which probably would have won all 16 of the 16 races that year if it hadn't been for Jean-Louis Schlesser tripping up Senna in the first corner at Monza. What do? I talked to my boys about it, and Vinny said, "What you got to do, Dad, is get some Post-it notes and just draw a stipple on the top of the screen where it says 1 on the timing screen on the left-hand side, and 1 down it, and just where it says 2 and 3, redraw 1, 2, and 3. Then it's quite interesting to watch." So, yeah, despite everything, Max won by 30 plus seconds. All we can hope for is that at some point it overturns. What else did I take from it? I mean, because it is just...
Chris, just one thing. Morris Hamilton posted something, I can't remember which 2 years, but if you go over consecutive years, Ferrari, I think it's either 51, 52, 53, 54, something like that, had 14 on the trot, apparently.
Oh, did they?
Apparently.
Oh, then I feel so much better about this season's Formula One.
It's the same.
So we all saw Lando breaking 40,000 euros worth of Max's trophy in his latest attempt to get the cork out of a champagne bottle, which I don't think Lewis has still perfected. So, yeah, it was a bit... And Perez got driver of the day, which I thought reflected a concerted social media campaign on behalf of his team or his camp, whatever, to hang on to his job. Because as it turned out, I think Danny Rick sort of did a good enough job to justify why he was in the sport.
Just.
But yeah, it was a bit turgid as a race.
Manish?
Yeah, we just do this every week.
Yeah, that was it.
Just
That's
sorry
the
to
summary of
give
the
me-
race. Yeah.
You text halfway through the race asking, "Is this boring?"
Well, look, I too have 2 quotes, and they're both from Lando Norris, and I think these are great. I know Lewis complains a lot of how amazing our car is and how bad the Mercedes is, but they don't have a bad car. That's Lando Norris #1, which I thought was quite good. And the other one is, try racing in 19th and 20th. He's brackets. Lewis has never done that in his life. So that's the only thing that Lewis hasn't done in Formula One. And I think, I'm just going to, the Neil Clifford glass half full side of me is absolutely thrilled for McLaren. We all felt after Silverstone, low downforce, circuit, completely different, weather, blah, 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 that maybe that was a lovely one-off. And, Hungaroring couldn't be more different to Silverstone. And maybe that McLaren is therefore for real. And wouldn't that just be a wonderful, wonderful thing? And I am metaphorically doing exactly what Chris has said, which is I'm putting a Post-it over the team that can't be mentioned and just talk about the rest. And you're right, Daniel Ricciardo, he did enough. I mean, what I would like to end with, though, is Ferrari. I mean, they are in a hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, big hole.
It's just, I wrote down again, this is what, there's a quote here from Charles Leclerc. And it's just really depressing. This is what Charles said. He said, "I cannot smile after the race today. Whenever we do a good job, no one notices. Whenever we do a bad job, everyone notices. We were too far off the guys at the front."
Yep.
That sounds like the global PR message for Pirelli Motorsport to me in Formula One. That does.
But I mean,
whenever something goes, I mean,
listen, I agree, but this team last won a world championship in 2007, the year that Lewis came into Formula One. Lewis has been at the Hungaroring 17 times.
Yeah.
So his 8 wins and 9 pole positions. You divide them by 2, you get a kind of Senna number. And that's what I mean. I just think that there's just something that feels very stuck right now to me about all of this. It all just feels very, very stuck. We're having, in a way, the same conversation now every week. And we're all, kind of holding on to some kind of, well, what's the next magic bullet? Is it 2026? We're going to keep doing this for another 2 years.
Vegas,
it's at this point that the constant noise generators of social media for these teams, I think, become a real hindrance for them, because at the beginning of the season, Ferrari was all on its toes, bouncing about. Every 5 seconds, there was a photograph of Carlos looking beautiful, and Leclerc doing the same thing. And now they don't have a message. They need some silence. They need to shut the fuck up and try and get on and do it. But what they've started noise. They have to continue with it. And it's at the end of this race, it's the same message. We will dig deep as a team. We're going to get to, it's just nonsense, really. They should have the chance to just press mute and go back and try and fix what they need to fix. It's really, I just feel very sorry for them on that front.
Is that doable in modern Formula One? I mean, I don't know if you watch the Sky coverage. They had children, quite a few children, and pretty precocious. Looked like pretty precocious drama school lot. I mean, they were unbelievably eloquent. They knew everything, and they were just boom, boom, boom. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my days, children might turn this on, kind of watch it, and then go, ooh, the children are much, much better than the racing. Basically, it's that show that we used to watch on a Saturday morning when we were kids, where the interstitial bits were so much better than the cartoons and the crappy half an hour, kind of reruns. There was just
why don't you just switch off the TV and do something less boring instead? There you go.
Yeah, those are the summers.
Oh, that was great.
Neil Clifford, did you think it was a waste of time, or did you want your money back?
Well, I only watched it because the cricket was rained off. Yeah. Because we'd all been watching the cricket, wouldn't we, really?
Yeah, of course.
Apart from the fact, it was great. I mean, Lewis did pull out a mega lap, didn't he, to get on pole? I mean, that was quite cool.
Yeah,
and
it was a special lap.
Yeah, we have to celebrate Adrian Newey, don't we? I mean, he's a bloody genius. He didn't design that. No, I think that was Gordon Murray, wasn't it? Who designed the first? The car he's just beat to win the most.
MP44. That's the subject of some debate.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, we're not going there. That's another one altogether.
Stevie Nichols.
But
okay, shots fired.
But what did Williams, McLaren, Red Bull? I mean, he is a proper hero of the United Kingdom, isn't he?
Yeah,
you've got to say Max is good because Checo's nowhere near him, is he? So Max is obviously brilliant. Adrian is a genius, once in a generation genius.
Yeah,
and good on McLaren.
Oh, Neil, we can't hear you.
Oh, hold on.
I can hear him.
Oh, no, we've lost everyone. Are you all there?
Oh, I think that's you, Edward.
That's you,
Johnny. Oh.
Our cunning plan has worked.
Oh, we've cut him off.
Lads, it's worked. It's worked.
It's worked. And
I think he's back in the room.
Good on Lando. Good on McLaren.
Yeah.
I got a couple of observations from this. One, I'm a Perez defender because I'm not sure that the way it works at Red Bull necessarily helps him. And I think he's under immense pressure and they don't really seem to support him at times. I mean, if you've got your ultimate boss that seems to stand behind you with a large scythe wearing a black cape, it's not really a very helpful situation.
Oh,
not,
don't start that softy shit again.
It's not softly shit.
I don't know. Neil, you can't be all cuddly and Mr. Nice, then suddenly become all Mr. Nasty now.
No, but they're in F1.
Let me finish my point. My point is this: in all the other dominant areas we've talked about, whether it's Mercedes before or at McLaren in 88, 89, we had at the very least you had two teammates teeing off against each other as a spectacle. You know, if there was a dominant car, there were two fuckers that could really get the best out of it. And we don't even have that this year. We've just got one bloke that runs into the distance. We've never had that to quite the same degree before, I don't think. And it just doesn't make for a great spectacle for me. And the most gratifying thing is that when I was looking at, and the media's working this out, they're responding to it. At the beginning of the summer, F1 was doing quite well in the broadsheets. They're slightly giving up on it. You know, there's the cricket. Sure. The cricket is making front page of the Times app. Formula One's no one's bothered with it. Lewis gets pole because we're British, maybe, but they've got to watch out. People are switching off. I think it's just processional.
Put Lando,
I think
put Lando in the second seat of the Red Bull.
Well, that's a really interesting question. That is a really interesting question, and I discussed that over the weekend with a few people. And just again, as ever, discussed it with my boys and said, if you were Lando, would you? And Helmut called and said, "Fancy a go? What would you do?" And there's an awful lot for him to. I mean, perhaps now when he can see the promised land, he might say, "No, I'm happy here, thanks. That's a viper pit over there." But you know, if somebody of a Lando or even a George, the other character, Ollie Bierman, who's in F2. Some of you may know who he is. British driver, very good, very, very good. It's his debut season F2 this year. I hear a number of whispers about maybe he's going to get a seat next year. Others will maybe clarify that. But you'd say to Lando,
go for it.
Worth a go. Give it a go. I mean, they are mates. I mean, that's not going to last very long, really, because it never does. Because it is, you know, the first person you want to beat is your teammate. You can see the tension a bit between Lando and between George and Lewis now as well. The Red Bull thing with Perez, I guess, Neil, we may never agree on this. I guess our view is, I think, Monkey, you and I see it similarly, is it may be that Perez just isn't good enough to be a second driver, in which case they've got more data than we have. The bit that I guess we find frustrating is it feels like there's a culture there, particularly from Helmut, which is the moment they sort of do something disappointing, it's immediately, oh, well, of course, you know, that part has failed. I need to find another part to put into that place where the part has failed. And if you're the part that looks like it's briefly failed, then it's hardly likely to improve your performance.
But I'll play devil's advocate to that with Lando. Helmut Marko is clearly very, very, very good at what he does. But he's never, ever been able to praise two of his drivers at one time. There's always a hero and a villain. Yeah. That's the friction he creates.
Correct.
So if Lando was to go there, he'd have to guarantee that he would dethrone Max. Otherwise, he'd be in the bin as well.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying the right thing to do.
I've never heard Helmut Marko go, yeah, both my drivers are brilliant. Just doesn't. When Vettel was there, Mark Webber was the wrong one. You know, everyone. If you're not the chosen one, you're in the bin, or you're standing next to the bin with the lid flapping, thinking, "Shit, I'm going in there."
That's me. That is, yeah,
yeah. Maybe just the other teeny talking point was just both the Alpines in the kitty litter, basically at turn. What was it? 3.
It was just turn 1.
It was turn 1. Sorry, yes, turn 1. Yes, it was Guanju.
That was a shame. It wasn't their fault, was it?
Shame. And that's turning into an absolute, that the narrative around that team is turning into.
Well, it's entertaining that Rossi, who was the guy who put poor old Otmar on standby earlier on in the year to say, I'm very disappointed with the performance of everybody here. It's Rossi who's now been sidelined, and Otmar must be chuckling into his pudding.
What's the next race?
Spa, big one, before the break rather than after the break. So
pray for rain.
Both bucket it down. Yeah.
Isn't it? But even if it rains, we're all just thinking, by how much will Max win? It's really strange.
Don't forget,
'Cause
last
it
year, that was his most dominant win by a long way, Spa. He absolutely nailed it. He was 33 seconds up the road yesterday.
Yeah.
33 seconds in a race where just couldn't quite get it right. And I've read 15 accounts of this in qualifying. And he was 33 seconds up, but the car was just working perfectly, and so was he. He's going to be gone in Spa. He is just going to be gone in Spa.
Can I just say one other point from the weekend in Hungary, Porsche Super Cup race, Harry King, British driver, won Super Cup. So he won at Monaco. He got chucked off the podium at Austria, which I thought was a bit harsh, and got poleaxed by Boccolacci at Silverstone when he could have been. So he's not quite leading championship, but he's clearly the class driver. So yeah, well done, Harry. Best of luck in Belgium.
No one realizes how difficult those cars are to drive, do they? They are properly technical things to drive. Right, here we go. We're moving on.
Especially in Crocs, Neil.
Yeah. We're moving on to a very important issue. And it's something that I can't say with a straight face because I have lampooned it in columns before. And that is, what is the most adorable steering feel?
Adorable.
The proviso here is that you actually... The proviso here is that you can actually believe in the concept of steering feel in a modern car. But let's, because it was Neil, I think, that proposed it. Let's get Neil to answer it first.
Well, I'm not going modern car. I've got one if you want it, but I'm keeping clean on one recommendation here. The Porsche 356.
Okay,
I just, not as if I can articulate why it's so much better than a Pagoda or a Ferrari Daytona or whatever, but it is just beautiful. As a classic car, you feel 100% connected to the road. You can feel every bump. You've got to be careful because those things do go round a bit further than you want them to if you get it wrong. They feel quite a dangerous car if you're going a bit too fast into a corner. We all have to read Dennis Jenkinson's book on the 356 to get that, and he writes a whole book about it. I still don't understand it, but the big steering wheel, the lightness of touch, the fact that this car is so light anyway, so you feel like you're driving a glider on the road, and it's just a wonderful thing to enjoy on a Sunday afternoon.
I would love it. Most adorable steering feel.
Well, obviously Neil clearly wrote this because I don't think anyone else would put adorable in there, but adorable in 356 probably goes to pretty well. I've written down two, and they are more modern, but they're not completely modern. So a 997.2 GT3.
Yeah,
I'm not sure the word is adorable, but in terms of steering feel, connection to the road, correct weight. And then I've also put a Lotus Elise, which I'll put that to just an original Series 1 Elise, super light, direct, very easy. That would be my choice. My father was trying to say last night, Neil, as I posed the questions to him, he was like, Bristol. It's a Bristol. That's the one. I knew he'd say that.
Good man. I know he likes Bristols.
I also asked him about one of the next questions. To which he bought me this an encyclopedia from 1885 to 1968.
Should be a companion in every gentleman's bathroom.
Manish, what's your favourite steering feel car?
So, bizarrely, I wrote here Series 1 Elise. I have actually driven a MX one. It's just the most beautiful feel. But can I say, the most adorable steering feel I've ever had was playing Jeff Crammond's Grand Prix 4 with a proper Momo steering wheel with a paddle shift. Doing a very quick lap when you're absolutely shit-faced at 2 a.m. on a Friday, okay, against a bunch of people, when you know every nook and cranny of Monaco with that lovely perfectly sized thing going boop, 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 boop. And I had a sort of change down from 6th to 1st with the yellow button with my thumb. That was actually I mean, pissed out of my mind though I may have been. That was definitely the most adorable steering feel.
You see, there's something for everyone here. A bit of simulator work. Chris Cooper.
So I adore the word adorable. Great word. I'm going to be really predictable. It's got to be Caterham 7. It's interesting.
Oh, number 2 on my list. Number 2 on my list.
Good man. It's interesting. Adorable steering feel is not the same as handling. When I first drove the Mark 1 Elise, I was ever so slightly, because I had a Caterham at the time, when they first came out, and I went down to the Bell and Colville sales office in just outside Guildford, really excited. And I actually drove down a Caterham. I said to Tesman, look, I've got one of those. You used to sell donkeys years ago. Let's try the new one. I was a bit disappointed. It felt quite understeery, felt a bit too low geared for me. Didn't necessarily give me a huge amount of confidence, even though there was lots in it, in confidence. Caterham 7 steering, it's unassisted. The steering wheel's in the right place. It's just, you just know everything. It gives you confidence. And whether you're pootling to the shops or absolutely extracting the last bit of performance on a hot lap at Spa, I mean, it's really boring, particularly. It's a bit like what's the answer to every question, a Porsche 911 or an E39 M5. Anything to do with steering, pedals, driving position, feel, Caterham 7.
I don't think I was driving fast enough when I owned a Caterham because I thought it was a bit heavy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the
bit heavy.
Caterham steering is very direct as well, and I quite like steering is, with a bigger wheel. Like, I think I get more from steering, more enjoyment. So I'm gonna be an absolute nerd here, and I'm gonna mention 2 cars that have been mentioned before, but I'm gonna choose different variants because I'm a road testing nerd that did too much of this. So there is a 911 GT3 in here, but it's not the 997 by any stretch. It's the 996.2 that has the best steering by a country mile. If we drove them back to back, Mr. Lovett would agree with me. It also confirms that the steering wheel has a big impact on steering feel. And the 997 was the first 911 to have a thicker steering wheel that was Alcantara. What you need is a thinner steering wheel with a harder rim, and the 996.2 has that. And the steering feel in that car is drive one down the road. In fact, any 996 Gen 2 has the best power-assisted steering feel of any car I've driven. It's absolutely remarkable. And if I was allowed a second, because I'm like Chris Cooper, I get to answer a different question to the one that's asked. I will. It's not the Series 1 Elise, lads. It's the Series 2 Elise, which doesn't look as good. Oh. But they did a lot of work. They did a lot of work on the Series 2 Elise. They put a different tire on it. They did a lot with the rear suspension because, as we all know, rear suspension has a massive impact on steering. Don't ask me why, but it just does. And the car steered. There was a lot more freedom to the steering. It didn't feel as though there was some stiction in it. Yeah. And also, it was a car that when it went sideways, you could catch it. In a Series 1 Elise, if you tried to catch it,
really hard.
Like I didn't once, you end up with a messy looking Lotus Elise.
That can come back to the episode of Edward Lovett Crashes Cars. I didn't catch it at Castle Combe in a Series 1 Elise. But luckily the Armco did catch me.
Oh, all's well then.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Car brands that most people have never heard of. I'm going to go straight to Manish here, whilst I do my research so I can find an answer because I've not done any yet. Manish, off you go.
Do you want to use my motor car encyclopedia here from 1885?
Can you put it up against the screen, please?
Oh, I love that.
Manish, go on.
No, this was so Googleable. I actually just picked the first 3 that I love the sounds of these. Neo, Xpeng, iWays. That's it. I'm going with those 3.
You just go to China, don't you? I mean, there must be 100 car companies over there who've never bloody heard of.
I could have listed a million, but the one that I had heard of that I probably shouldn't have heard of, and that possibly other people haven't heard of, I heard of when I was 14, when I bought Duran Duran's album Duran Duran. And on the cover of that, these boys are wearing their mum's blouses and wearing various chiffon scarves.
That was the first album.
Yeah, the first album. It's got Planet Earth. That's the first track.
Yeah.
Or it could have been Girls on Film. I can't remember. It's been 40 years. But they had a Delahaye on
nice.
the album.
Nice, yeah.
It's so beautiful. I was having a look
Yeah.
at the Roadsters, and I think if you don't know what a Delahaye Roadster is, go and look at these.
Beautiful.
They are just, and I did that kind of, we all do it, the little research for this, the wiki hole that then leads to the more specialist hole that leads to the even more
We
specialist.
don't talk about that in public, that particular.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was gonna send. So I googled rare car names, and the wiki page that comes up for that is brilliant because they've got the cars from each country that are either still in production and now out of production, and the list of some of those cars. There's wonderful names in there.
No, it's absolutely beautiful. I'll tell you what, if we ever manage, and by the way, there are 16 456s available in the UK now, still only one bloody manual. But if I ever get my hands on this 456 mythical unicorn, I am going to save up or sell everything I own to get a really beautiful Delahaye Roadster. These things are, I'm just going to put it in my living room. I'm going to just polish it every day and just walk around it a lot. It feels so beautiful.
It sounds like you need to book your ticket to Pebble Beach and go and see the concours because the best pre-war cars are there.
I'm coming.
This is now becoming a backlog, Manish.
Of 2 cars. That's tripling total consumption.
Chris Cooper.
So I'm going to preface this with a little story about Douglas Bader. So a few years ago, this story is often printed in the papers when it's the anniversary of his death or his birthday. So Douglas Bader, everyone knows who he is, the de-limbed World War II fighter pilot ace, who flew from West Hampnett, Goodwood, as now is in Tangmere, down in Sussex. So he was famously invited to a probably very posh girls' school, sometime, I guess, in the 60s or 70s. And he was, the headmistress introduced him to all the bright young things, said, Squadron Leader Bader is going to tell you, ladies, about his time as a fighter pilot in the war. He got on there, and he's not a man of today's, anyway. So he said, so he told a story about his war. He said, I was in the sky above Sussex, and there were Fokkers to the left of me and Fokkers behind me and Fokkers all around. And he kept on describing this way. And the headmistress said at one point, I think Squadron Leader Bader is referring to the fact that many of these Germans were in Fokker Wolfs. And he said, that may be as it is, dear lady, but some of these Fokkers were in Messerschmitts, which tells us and reminded me that Messerschmitt, Heinkel, and BMW all made cars.
Yes.
And they made them in the 40s, well, probably 50s until the early 60s, when I hadn't realized West Germany only joined NATO in 56. You think of them straight away. And before West Germany had its economic revival, tricycle or scooter cars were the thing. BMW 300, the BMW Zeta 300 is a lovely thing. So Heinkel, BMW and Messerschmitt all made cars.
Are they all micro cars? The Messerschmitt was a
effectively micro cars, yeah, sort of 2 at the front. Some of them had, it was a BMW Zeta 600.
There was a slightly longer one, yeah.
Yeah, it looks.
The Messerschmitt was the best looking of the micro.
It was,
cars.
and
it looked like a cockpit of an aircraft.
Yeah,
there was a Barchetta version, if you can call it that, of the Messerschmitt made, and it literally was. It looked like it had driven under a very, very low bridge, so it was like chopped off at the top of the scuttle, with like a pilot's yoke sort of thing. So I think we should remember and celebrate that all those aircraft companies made fantastic cars. I saw something else in the same wiki hole that Manish went down. There are 500 defunct car companies that have made cars in the UK.
Yeah, the UK was the biggest the manufacturer back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. My last point on this is because the one I actually sort of stuck in my mind is Jowett. So Jowett made cars from the early 20th century to about 1956. And they stick in my mind because a few years ago, I met somebody who was chairman of the Jowett Javelin Owners Club. And when I met him, it made me think, and I've met a few of these people, And I mean this with great affection and love and respect. but
When
I
you
have
say
noticed-
when you say these people, Chris, what do you mean?
I mean enthusiasts for marks from our bygone years, Chris.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Was that a large
They
owners club?
all they sort of all end up looking like the cars they're curating. And
Always.
this bloke who looked after the Jarrett Javelin, he looked in a kindly way, like a bit like a Jarrett Javelin himself. And and the Jarrett Javelin, if you can imagine the car that would have been in Thomas the Tank Engine, but a friendly car, not a car driven by the Fat Controller. No, he would not have driven a Jarrett Javelin. So a Jarrett Javelin is so. I think the fact that there are in our eccentric country people who are preserving the memory, I think is great. Jarrett Javelin.
Neil Clifford.
So a guy called John Gordon.
Oh, I know where you're going with this. I had that on my list.
Keeble got
Yes.
together and built a car factory in Eastleigh.
Yeah.
Fucking Eastleigh. Brilliant. And they recruited a very young designer at Bertoni, Giugiaro. The first car that was designed by Giugiaro was called a Gordon Keeble. And you know what? These things are gorgeous. If Ferrari had made it, it would be worth £5 million.
You're right. I know this.
They only made 99 of them, so it's rarer than a McLaren F1. It's got a Chevrolet 327. It's manual, most importantly. So it sort of pisses over Bristol, really, in that era of the 409 and the 410, the 411. Even though I'm a big Bristol fan, they would be so much cooler if they were manual. So you've got this beautiful Italian Giugiaro body, in brackets, made of fiberglass. You've got this incredible 300 horsepower Chevrolet engine, 140 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. Ferrari 250 rear lights.
Yeah, it's a bit Ferrari 250-ish, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Better looking, actually.
I agree. At the front, definitely.
The first electric windows almost in any car. Doorbells for light switches. That's so British. And they were all tested on the old Roman road between Winchester and Stockbridge at 140 miles an hour.
Founded in Slough.
Just fantastic. It was a bit more expensive than an E-Type, but half the price of most other things, about $3,000 new. I think the company went bust 2 or 3 times. Started in 1960. If you look at that car as a 1960 car, it's something that you could turn up in Saint-Tropez and as Steve McQueen and stand out. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's got a tortoise as a badge. How amazing is that?
Cool is that?
Because when they were doing the press photo, a tortoise came into the photograph. So they thought that was ironic and used that. I wonder where I got all that research from.
Neil, I've just brought it up. It's got the
beautiful
Rolls Royce that I like, the Chinese eyes.
But if you see one in real life, it's actually gorgeous.
God, it is. Yeah.
Do you think it was because it was glass fiber? Because it must have died in the 73 oil crisis or somewhere around about then.
69, I think.
64 to 67 they were built.
So here's a question for you: Gordon Keeble or Facel Vega? Because I always think of them as being quite similar cars.
Similar, yeah. I don't have Gordon Keeble.
Yeah, it's not.
I don't really like France.
You've got to use it to get to Italy, though.
Only if you drive.
I take either of those.
Edward, it sounds like you might have to have thought of a new example.
Well, luckily I did. So obviously 500 defunct British car manufacturers, and Neil does exactly the same research as me this afternoon.
I didn't need a book, though.
So I actually came up with this topic because we sold a car on Collecting Cars the other night, and I looked at it, and it was no reserve, and it was quite inexpensive, and I thought, that's an interesting looking thing, and I've never heard of one of those. And it was a Bitter SC. We sold.
Everyone's heard of that.
I hadn't. So they and funny enough, they're actually still
top trumps.
They're still making cars now for China and things like that.
Opel underpinnings, weren't they?
Different guises, but the Bitter SC was built on a an Opel Senator. So
Yeah.
it wasn't that interesting, but we sold it for 10,250 quid. And, you know, I think they made 400 of them, but it was a really interesting looking car.
Yeah, they was a coach built car based on an Opel Monza, wasn't it? It was based on
That's it. Top trumps. Yep.
And they
There we go.
The earlier ones are quite delicate and pretty. They got a bit heavier handed with the bumpers later on.
They did. They tried to bring the business back in 2007 and they rebodied a Holden V8 as well.
They did, yeah. And they named it after an alcoholic drink that they make in the UK. Did you know that?
It's called a vino. No?
A bitter. Jesus Christ.
Oh, sorry. I'm sort of thought you were talking about the model, the Holden model.
The bitter vino.
The bitter
Ed
vino.
would love it. Bitter vino. 6-pack.
To be honest with you, delving into that wiki page, there's some wonderful old cars that we can talk about from Italy, from the UK. Then they're never going to come back, but Ciata and things like that in Italy, Cisitalia.
But look at that, the Bricklin.
Oh, what a
Look
car.
at that.
Oh, do you know what? That's the one with the gull wing doors, isn't
Go
it?
up a bit,
Yes.
Neil. Up a bit.
Up a bit.
Yeah.
Up a bit. That's it. There it
Look
is.
at that. That's a cool thing.
I
That
had dinner
never-
with someone.
You could never
I
win.
did it with someone the other week who was talking to me about the Bricklin and how it worked out. Effectively, it was 10 years before the DeLorean, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Look at that. Hearing aid beige.
Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? Yeah.
What have you
was,
got, Chris?
I knew you guys would come up with some very good answers for that. So I just tried to remind myself of two instances of how car companies that were just central to my life don't exist anymore. Well, at least one, particularly with my youngest child, who was nearly 13 years old. We were out the other day and he said, "What's that?" And I said, "That's a Lancia." And he went, "What's that?"
Wow.
Oh,
Amazing.
Mm.
No, it's amazing. I just said, never even heard of one before. And it's just, that just shows you, it makes me feel old, actually.
Yeah.
And I think the other one that totally got me was the first time, this is pre-internet and I don't really know about pre-war cars, but the first time that someone stumped me with a car that I'd never heard of, and Chris Cooper will know this chap, was Peter Haynes. When he turned up in something and I went, "What the hell's that?" And he said, "It's an Amel car."
Oh, yes.
And I'd never heard of never ever heard of an Amel car
French,
before.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, gorgeous little thing. Neil wouldn't
Yeah.
like it. It's French.
Yeah.
But I did just think to myself that when you start to investigate, there are lots of car companies that you've never heard of. But I think if you're under the age of 20 and you don't know much about cars, you would never have heard of a Lancia. That is
No.
bizarre to me.
That's
Yeah.
right. We need to change that.
Now we're moving on to another important subject for the nerds of this world. What's your favorite wedge car? In other words, a car that looks like it was styled in honor of a chunk of cheese. Well, not soft cheese, because that would look like something else. I'm going to go first to Neil Clifford.
well, this week's book recommendation, which doesn't cost £1 million, is the new gorgeous Ferrari 512 and 365 Box de Berlinetta book. And that is my favorite wedge car because, and I know where everyone will want to choose the Countach, but I think for me, this is better. And I have experience of both, but look at that. I mean, is there a better designed car from a side angle than that?
Is that a 365, that one?
That one is a 365 because it's
Yeah.
got 6 exhausts, yeah.
Yeah.
But frankly,
Has it got
from the side, they all look the same.
There's 365's a slightly shorter chassis with a bit more power.
and
It had a bit
365
more
has,
power, 380 versus 360, a bit less torque.
doesn't the 365 have knockoff wheels though?
Yes, it did. But look at that.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good.
That is
It's
pretty
different.
damn good.
Because we're so kind on this show, we're going to say that's pretty damn good, but it's obviously not the winner because Manish Pandey's going to tell us it's the winner. Now, come on, what's the winner?
Lamborghini Countach LP 400. That's the one. That's the LP 400. I mean, Neil, in terms of absolute beauty, you are absolutely right. Because I think out of the five of us, you are the total aesthete. You do aesthetic things for a living. But I think part of what is the most beautiful wedge car is also, almost when is the first time you saw one? Did you have an asthma attack and all the rest of it? And I remember I had a sort of minor asthma attack in my teens when I saw a Maserati Merak on the street. And you wouldn't have thought a Merak would look as beautiful in a way as a Bora, but it's more wedgy because of the front. It's just got that little point.
Yeah, it's a pretty car.
Oh, it's so pretty. And I've seen one or two Berlinetta boxes on the road, and they just make you stop. But when I was 8, and I think I've shared this story already on one of our earlier podcasts, when I was 8, I went to the motor fair in Earl's Court.
Love that.
And I went with my stepmother, with whom I was supposed to be bonding, and she was lovely. Crazy.
Motor fair was Birmingham. Sorry to interrupt you. Motor fair was Birmingham, wasn't it?
No, it was the Earl's Court Motor Fair in 1975.
Okay, I thought it was Motor Fair.
God, I remember that as if it was yesterday. So we, what was amazing about it, I mean, she, by the way, the Berlinetta Boxer was the only car she ever wanted to buy. And she said she only made 2 big mistakes in her life. One was investing in a practice with my father, and the second one was marrying my father. So they were her 2 big mistakes. And otherwise, she really would have had a Berlinetta Boxer. But we went to this, and at the Lamborghini stand, they had a beige Countach LP 400, and I was just so far beyond mesmerized. And other things sort of bite you. Maserati comes in, maybe very beautiful car, definitely the Berlinetta Boxer. Lamborghini Huracan, maybe
Wedgy enough.
Pantera.
Quite wedgy enough.
Yeah, all of these, they're all not wedgy enough. And also, I mean, somebody could argue on this, even more beautiful than the LP400 was the Prototipo, which didn't have the air boxes. Yeah. And if you don't have the air boxes, then it's even more wedgy. But I think the original Countach, it just something about that car absolutely to this day kills me.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm not sure. I'm going to adjudicate ultimately on this, I think, and I'm not sure who's winning just yet. And because the other two aren't dissimilar to me, I'm going to answer now just in case they've chosen what I've chosen, and they'll have to then re-research pretty bloody quickly.
Harsh but fair.
Okay, there's only one wedge for me, and it's not those two, because for me the wedge is obviously referring to the front of the car and how it cleaves the air, that aggressive shape that's the triangle like that. But what goes on at the back of the car is really important, and sometimes the wedge is so dominant the back of the car doesn't quite work. And I think the 365 512 BB sometimes around the rear arches isn't quite perfect for me, the way that it sits with the wheel. And there's a car that I think is absolute wedge perfection. It's the Series 1 Esprit. I just think it's an absolutely...
Yeah,
I just think it's brilliant. And it's specifically the Series 1. They got messier later on. But if you see a white, Spy Who Loved Me Esprit on those wolf race wheels, it is, from the profile, that's the best wedge shape for me. Neil Clifford won't agree, but I just think it's sensational, and it's British, so I freaking love it.
Cool.
Chris Cooper.
My favorite,
what's your choice?
Okay, so the question was favorite wedge car, and my favorite wedge car was the Bond Bug.
Oh,
okay.
No, just kidding. Of course it wasn't. It was Lotus Esprit, Series 1.
I just say
for all the reasons
to talk for 2 minutes.
For all the reasons you said, it was because it's the one that resonated, the one that felt sort of almost somehow accessible. It was British. It was Roger Moore. It was James Bond. It was those wolf race wheels, that Series 1 shape on the quay in Corsica, Barbara Bach, him, the helicopter chase we talked about, all those things, Roger Becker, just, there's a speech by some Norwegian football commentator that should have been cited to celebrate how all those Italians took a hell of a beating from that beautiful Series 1 Esprit. So yeah, favourite wedge, because it was that time in our lives.
Oh.
Yeah, you know.
Come on. If you haven't got a model, Chris, it's not included.
You can take
that.
You can
Well,
take
when
your
you-
Italian stuff.
See, what you do,
hey,
Chris,
that
is,
one's not a wedge.
Chris,
I'm
what
in
you
a
do
car
is
park
you
in North Wales.
listen to this. Listen, what you do is when you want one of these and you're married to my wife, you wait till your son turns 5 and you spend 250 quid on one and buy it for him.
Yes.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
That's what you do. I just had to raid his bedroom.
I've just come back from holiday. I don't have a model on me, but I do have some hair clippers.
Yeah.
Just in case you need a trim anywhere. But I don't have a model of an Esprit Series 1.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Which is a
Yeah,
very,
no, it's
very,
Esprit
very,
Series
very
1.
beautiful car.
Esprit
Very-
Series 1. Because it is the classic wedge. I love, and I was very, very lucky to have a very brief ride in Neil's beautiful 512. And it is, I mean, I adore it and love it. I'm not quite sure it's a wedge in the same way that a Series 1, but it's still, I mean, it's more beautiful. It's more stunning. It's a lovely, lovely.
course
And
it's a
it was
bloody
so much
wedge.
better. There it is. And it was so much better as a thing than I could possibly have imagined.
I can't do
You're
that.
not-
I can't
and
do
now-
that.
And I know where he lives now.
It's a bloody wedge.
It's a wedge.
If you're not watching this on YouTube and you're listening to it, Neil Clifford just turned his camera around to point at the front of a 512 BB. So
I'm looking
he's
at
done
it.
quite a
It's
good
It's
job.
stunning.
there.
Neil, I'm with you on it. It's stunning. Yeah,
It's
I
even
love
the
it.
colour of
And there's
cheese.
Yeah.
There's only one way to describe Chris Cooper's reverse there, is that it was frankly groveling, so he gets another go in the car.
Yeah,
Not,
I'll do anything.
Not edifying for any of us to witness or hear, and I'm sorry for you viewers at home if you can see the spit all over Neil Clifford's shoes. Edward Lovett, what would you love in a wedge car?
So, BMW M1.
Yes.
Yeah. Give you that.
Well,
I
that's
think-
marginally wedgy.
But that's there
Beautiful.
because I've obviously had to write 6 cars, knowing that most of them are going to be, depending on where I come on the list, they're all going to be dropped off. But I think BMW M1 pretty cool. I have written down we talked about it a few weeks ago. Aston Bulldog. Now that's that's such a cool thing, doing 204 miles an hour. But I'm going to come back to my actual choice. But the Stratos and the 308 GT4, that I just love those compact little packages. And actually,
100%.
if you go and sit in a
Beautiful,
Stratos with
beautiful,
the dash, but both externally and internally, that car is not a disappointment. They are so cool.
Yeah.
But I've mentioned this car now in the last 28 weeks, I think 4 or 5 times in the podcast, which does mean I will have to buy one day. That is the car I'm going to turn up randomly to a dinner for us 5, and it is an LP 400 Periscopio.
Yes.
It's not going to be yellow. It can't be red. I did email that company in Germany with that picture I showed you a few weeks ago of that gold one, which they sold. But it'll have to be some mad color. But one day I will arrive in that car.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, so that's 3 Bertones, a Giugiaro, and whatever.
I'm afraid to say that based on the democratic standards of the Collecting Addicts podcast, it is the Countach that wins.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Oh, thank you.
I think we might need to miss the titty out.
Yes, I'm afraid to say there was another thing here that we'll discuss another time. I won't bore you with that. And we're going to move straight on to our 2-car garage. That this week is going to be read by Edward Lovett. And if you need it, you can go and make 4 cups of tea and go for a lap of the block if you want to, because it's a long one before he's finished it. Edward, see if you can read it out.
You've been following the market closely over the last few years, and although you've been super keen to buy a car or two, you've been nervous as the FOMO you've witnessed can't go on forever. Fear of missing out, for those who don't know what FOMO is. You're not a speculator, but you wouldn't forgive yourself if you bought at the top of the market before a circa 20% price drop comes. Your wife will probably be less forgiving. 2022 was a strong year for your firm, and the Q1 bonus payment is waiting to be deployed. And you want to make sure it's used on cars before it's put in to a family holiday home. You've got up to £400,000 to spend on 1, 2, or 3 cars. You're wanting cars that have softened from their peak, that are starting to look like better buys. Classic cars aren't a thing for you, so it has to be something from the last 20 years. Any money left over can be used for the wife and kids for half-term holidays in October. There we go.
You charm.
I just say that's so complicated.
I know.
We're trying to create
not.
situations. People think like this.
Do they?
They do.
Yeah.
I think they do.
But have you finished, Edward? Is that done?
No, next chapter 2.
This is like Cyril on That's Life about 1 million years ago, isn't it?
Oh my God, remember that? That was weird.
Cyril, yeah. Right, now Edward's proposed it, and I'm going to go first. I never go first in this one, so I'm going to go first this time. Here we go.
First.
There's a woman walking a cockapoo that's about to wee on my wheel. I'm not sure she knows I'm in the car. Very strange. Here we go. Here we go. I'm going pretty modern, and I'm saying I do want 3 cars from it, because I've treated myself. I've worked bloody hard, and I've been waiting there. And the one car that I've looked at as a family car, there she goes. See her go behind me? There you go. That's the cockapoo, just on a winkle. I think I've been looking at G400Ds, the G-Wagon with the diesel engine, because they've been bloody expensive, but I think they're just about to soften a bit, because I think there are a few on the market, and it's a great car. It is. I know they're ludicrous, they're tanks, but the diesel one doesn't make too much noise. It rides beautifully. That diesel engine is fantastic. It's got loads of range. You don't look like a gangster in it somehow. I'll spend the extra money on the clear glass that you can get sent over from Gratz, but there you go, G400D. My next car is a bit random, but I think it's been overpriced. It's come back a bit. There's not too many of them, but this is me showing my age, and it's shameful. I wouldn't have chosen this 15 years ago. I'd have been horrified. It's the 992 Targa Heritage Edition that's in that deep purple colour. I just think they're brilliant cars, the 992 Targas. I really do. And that Heritage pack, it's got this sort of cloth interior that's in a beige colour, really works for me.
You want it with the numbers on the side and everything, don't you?
With stickers?
You're such a chap.
Without stickers. I've got no breeding. I'm a goat roper from bloody Iraq, mate. It makes no difference whether you think I've got breeding or not. So I think I love that burgundy colour as well. It just speaks to my inner old man. But you need a toy, and you need to treat yourself, but you need to buy a car that you looked at. This is key to this. It's something you looked at and thought, I can't buy that now, because I think it's going to go down a bit. And I think these have come down a bit, and it does duplicate with the 992 a little bit. And I can get all of these for this budget. It's a 488 Spider. I just think they're absolutely brilliant sports cars. They're coming back in price. I think 130, 140,000 pounds gets you one. Why you'd want a brand new thing for 350 grand when this thing is fast enough to scare you to death. I think they look great, 488s. I just think it's a great value car. That's the one I've been tracking for a long time, thinking, oh, when's the time to buy one of them? And I think the time might be ripe to put your hand in your pocket. So nothing exceptional there, but I think the kids are happy.
Well done for embracing it, Chris. Managed people do think like this.
And also at half term, we're going to stay at home. We're going to bond. We're going to do a bit of reading. We're going to go on some long walks in the woods. We don't need to go away because I spunked it all on a 488 Spider. Okay. Neil Clifford next, please.
I'm buying the 2 best cars that have been made in the last 20 years. There isn't any debate about this. So it's, and if you disagree, then you're just wrong. It's 997 GT3 RS. And you buy it in, if there's a Gen 2, there wasn't a Gen 2, it was just one, wasn't there? You buy it in you buy it.
There were 2. There was a Gen 1 and a Gen 2.
Gen 2. Yeah, because you don't want the orange or the black one. You want the 3.8. and you want it in the grey with the gold livery or the blue with the red livery. It was, I know we can't mention Evo Car Magazine, but it was the car of Evo forever. Even better than the 4 litre, they said. I'm not sure you agree. I agree with that. But anyway, you can't get another car if you buy a 4 litre. So definitely the 3.8. And then you've got about 250 grand left if you cut a good deal on the 997. And
That's
you go
a well-bought 997.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
possible.
Maybe you buy a left hooker. Buy a left hooker.
Okay.
And then you go and buy a
Southpaw.
458 Speciale. It's gonna be worth 400 grand in 10 years' time. Last of the normally aspirated, better sounding than a 488. Not as fast, but I'm not a very good driver anyway. So I'll let Chris go ahead 3 miles ahead of me in his 488 Spider, but I've got the cooler car. I've got.
Can I make one observation? That's the first time we've done this when Neil hasn't chosen a convertible.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Oh,
but I couldn't get the
good
Aperta.
spot.
But I just wanted the 2 best cars, and I think they are the 2 best cars of the last. You start thinking about Aston or McLaren or fucking whatever Maserati. It's Porsche and Ferrari, right? They're the 2 king marks, and you buy the 2 best ones.
When we're
Okay,
offline, Neil, can you email me where you think I could go and buy a 997 RS Gen 2 and a 358 Speciale for 400 grand?
You
Yeah, I
just
will,
got to bid them in the nuts.
Collectingcars.com. That'd be 500 grand.
We've got 2 nice ex-Libyan cars coming up for sale soon. What do you, Chris Cooper? What are you going to go for?
I had a 358 Speciale, but I
358.
reckon that was going to be 458 Speciale. I reckon it was going to be 350 grand.
No.
No, they're coming. They're softening.
Are they?
Softening.
So I had that, and actually I had 2 versions. I had that and an Audi R8 V8 manual.
Yeah, okay.
And then my other version, because I wasn't sure about the Speciale in terms of how much it would be, Audi R8 V8 manual, possibly convertible, because still quite a good car, and I can fit it. The later one is just smaller inside. I couldn't fit it.
Hmm.
And then I had Bentley Brooklands Coupe. Love that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And a Mercedes SLS.
That's a good car.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a good
interesting.
car,
Interesting. You've blown all your money. You're about 600 grand now.
No, R8, Bentley Brooklands and SLS, that would be about 400.
Fair dues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it would be standing in the queue for fish and chips at the Watch Out in St Maur's. Yeah.
SLS is a good choice, really.
It's getting they're going back up again now, but I think
gone
it's
up
such
a
lovely-
lot. Yeah.
Well,
it's
that's why
it's a
you
lovely
you
car.
haven't quite listened to my. Chris was very good, well behaved. He really listened to what I said. Identifying prices that were softening off. You've gone and bought an SLS. If that market turns over winter and it shits itself,
That's not
you're
going
not
anywhere.
going to be
That's-
happy with
that's-
yourself.
that's
You
only
might
going
have
one
lost
way.
40 grand.
Yeah, I might have done. Yeah, I know, and I know you'll be there. I know you'll be there to sympathise when that happens.
Oh yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Manish, what are you having?
Like, I just found this a complete conundrum. I mean, I literally spent an hour reading and rereading it. And I was thinking, what kind of person gets a £400,000 bonus for activity from 2022 Q1? And I decided it was somebody who'd procured PPE for the government. They're literally the only people who made any money in 2021. So you've got this guy, he doesn't really know anything about cars and just kind of has made loads of money from various masks and things. And he's whipping through collecting cars and piston heads and all the others. And I think he falls in love with a Ferrari Pista.
Hmm.
And I think you can buy one of those for just over £300,000. And I was having a little tiny look. I guess you have to put your finger up in the air, but they don't look like they're going to lose any money to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What's your
Chris
second
is rubbing his mustache and his beard.
No, I think a piece is very interesting because I think it sort of that explores the very territory that Edward was suggesting here. That when do you? A lot of people want a pista. When do you buy one? I mean, if you
Buy
bought
one,
one when they were, if you bought one when they were new and you had a late delivery, you were gutted. I mean, people were wriggling out of those as fast as they could. But now it's all settled down, and the next special car is £300,000 more. Suddenly, do you want a pista? We're going to see a run on pistas. We might well do, because everyone that wants one of these XXs is going to say, "Well, I'll have the last one," and that drives prices up suddenly. That's what seems to be what happens. So I think the pista is an interesting subject, but might be 8 months too early. That'd be my thoughts. But there we go. Manish, what would I know?
You do this for a living? I just look at the catalogs, and so the pista was great. And the other thing I looked at was something that you guys have talked to me about quite a lot, and it's the 612.
Oh, I thought about that.
And I think you may well be. I just look. They have been softening and softening and softening. And you look inside that car. You look under the bonnet. You look at it from behind. You look at it from
it's a pretty car now.
Yeah, I think you really may be landing on your feet if you buy one of those for £80,000. You really may be. And I think that combination, as I said, just put them in a Perspex box in the living room, stare at them a lot for a year, don't drive them. I think you could be laughing next year. That was my gut feeling. So that's it. Box of PPE in the back, just in case, and you've made your bonus.
So I like that, but you have to be collected from your tasteless gym palace in the 612 just to offset the tastelessness of your gym palace. Edward Lovett, what are you going for?
Well, I'm going to go back to the Wedge question. I'm going to buy a DeLorean. I'm going to go back to the future. So my 400 grand buys me something like a McLaren F1 or something like that. And I've by the way, this genuinely,
the sort of stunt I would pull.
I almost played this game for fun, Manish, and I've done it my entire life as a car dealer, as a car lover, and I'm sure most of us do. And you go on to Auto Trader, Car and Classic, collecting cars, whatever the website might be, and there are certain cars that are running away from you that you just can't get your head around, and they're not coming back. And certain cars, they're just not coming back into our scope. A 993 Turbo S would be one of those. That was a 250 grand car, and now it's a £500,000 car. But a 993 Turbo, they were sort of raising up. I think they probably have
200 now.
Yeah, they've set.
But how many have you bought? How many have you bought?
Chris, an SLS, I've written that down here. That is a car at the moment that is still going up in value. And I think it may well do that, but I'm not an investor. And for me personally, I can't just go and pay £200,000 for an SLS because, they weren't that easy to sell when they were 125 grand. These cars, when they're at a particular price, they don't fly off the showroom floors all of a sudden. And a 458 Speciale, that they've been pumped up over the last 12 months. I think it's a brilliant car. I see that as a market that will calm down a little bit. And people get quite carried away with trends and fads and what their mates are buying, and they end up dumping that and hopping into something else. Another car I track quite closely is 992 Turbo S's ever since I drove one around the track at Goodwood. It's a phenomenal car, but Porsche have done a couple of price rises. For the last year, they've been over £200,000 for a normal car, but they are dropping down. They're 170-ish. For a good car, but a Gen 2's about to come out. So in a minute, you'll be able to buy a one owner 3,000 mile, 2022 Turbo S for 140,000 quid. That's a huge amount of car for the money by any modern standards. But the cars I've written down here that I think I'd like to buy is a Ford GT, because I think it's a really imposing car. I think, you need your wits about
Which one?
Previous generation.
Mid-2000s.
Yeah. So you can buy one of those for mid-£200,000.
A good wedge.
Say that again?
It's a good shaped wedge as well.
It is, yeah. Alpine A110s. I've never driven one. I'd quite like to drive one. There's about 176 on Auto Trader at the moment, and they're just about to come under the 40 grand mark. So they're sort of they've been, because they've kept launching new models that are sort of 65 grand new and 75 grand new. It's held the bottom of the market up, but they've sort of dropped back now. So you might be able to buy one of those for late 30s. And then I wrote down a 612 Scaglietti potentially, but I think I'd go with Neil. I think I'd put the last bit of money into a 993 turbo.
That's where the clever money is.
So that's my pick. Very complicated, but these are dilemmas. I think a lot of our watchers will be torturing themselves thinking, shall I go now? Shall I buy it? Shall I wait? What should I do? What about if it goes down in value? What about if I miss it before it goes up in value?
You
Well,
need
the
to
thing is,
start a
it
new
doesn't matter
website
if you
called
haven't got the money.
collecting options, don't you? You
You
just
can
get an
still
option.
scheme it constantly. It's what I've
Scheming.
done. Age 7, thought about this.
Yeah.
But it happens at all price ranges as well. You know, I remember
It does.
sitting there
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah.
"Oh, do I buy a 306 GTI 6 now, or are they going to dip at the end of the summer? I'll save myself 1,500 quid." We will, honestly, dear listener, we will do a slightly more ordinary one next week that will discuss vehicles lower in the price range.
We did one a couple of weeks ago for what was the budget, like 20 grand or 30 grand, and we were all struggling to know. There were so many great options for that amount of money.
Music, because we're all natural musicians. So we'll get the stylish stuff out of the way first with Manish.
It is the summer holidays, and there is no curfew on my son going to sleep. So he has discovered Breaking Bad. Oh, so I watched this, obviously when the first run came with my wife, and I remember it was really the first time I've actually ever binged anything. Really, really, Nat and I would watch it in the evening, go, oh, we'll watch another episode. Oh, let's just watch another.
Exactly.
Suddenly it was 2 a.m.
And it's
and
February.
we're going, what are we doing? What are we doing? And this piece of music, if you remember at the end of series 4, Mr. White kills Gustavo Fring. And it's a really big moment because in terms of sort of writing structure of the series, he's free. It's the first time in this entire 4-series sort of box set at this point, he's free. He can do what he wants to do with his life. And he phones his wife and she's terrified. She's wondering what's gone on. There are lots and lots of news reports on the death of Gustavo Fring. And she sort of says to him, were you involved in some way? And he basically says, this is just, it's so beautiful if you're a middle-aged man. He says, honey, I won. And it's just a great moment. He wins. And the piece of music that they used to see the show out with, I mean, I'd just completely forgotten it. It's from an album called Rome, and it's Danger Mouse, the producer. Nora Jones is on it, and the piece of music is called Black. And it is just unbelievable. It's all of us winning. And I love that.
But yeah, it's amazing. So how we watch, we take different things from different sequences in films. I remember the music, but I'm still horrified by that image of when Fring walks out and half his face has been blown away. I remember watching it thinking, because you see the right side of his face and it pans round and you just think, then he just keels over. He is the Walking Dead at that point.
It's even more incredible. He walks out of that room. The shot is taken so that you see face left, okay? He does his tie up before he dies. That's what he does. He literally adjusts his tie, and then what you don't notice in the background is somebody you can see the right-hand side of his face, and it's a nurse. She's walking down the corridor, and she just goes, what? Like that. Then the camera comes around, you realize the right-hand side of his face and body are missing, and he just collapses. It's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
Have you, I've started to watch Better Call Saul. I've never seen Breaking Bad.
Oh my God. It's unbelievable. Better Call Saul.
And everyone says that. And I started watching Better Call Saul, which I actually quite like.
Better Call Saul is actually, I think, even better. It's extraordinary.
Even better.
Where is that? Is that on Netflix?
One of those.
Yeah, on Netflix. Because it's got Mike, who is just extraordinary in it, hasn't he?
Mike, who's the guy in the parking kiosk. Yeah.
Chris Cooper.
So we talked a lot about the 90s, and I thought about this at the weekend. Blur and Pulp have both reformed.
Yep.
And are doing tours. And it kind of reminded me about Britpop. And there was an article on the BBC website I saw over the weekend, or my little app thing. And I hadn't realised it was the journalist Stuart McConey, who used to be on Radio 1 years and years ago, who coined the term Britpop. And there's a reference in here to a letter he wrote in Select magazine, which was a bit around when it's gone now, April 93. And he styled it as an angry letter to the Nirvana frontman, Kurt Cobain. And he said, "Enough is enough. Yanks, go home and take your miserable grunge wear and your self-obsessed slacker bands with you. We don't want played. We want crimpling, glamour, wit, and irony. It's time to bring on the home guard. These, Kurt, are the boys who will stop your little game. Suede, St. Etienne, Pulp, Denim, Radiohead, the Auteurs, bands with pride." And I just thought the reason why it probably hasn't stuck with Stuart McConey is he also insisted on calling Britpop the Crimple Nests. Anyone know that? I didn't know that.
Nope.
So he hasn't really got the credit he should have had. But those aren't the bands I've picked my music from this week, because I was going to pick one from there. But coming home yesterday from Cornwall, I heard a track on my random thing on my car that made me think, that's a fantastic song. Moving On Up from Primal Scream.
Oh, that's nice.
From Screamadelica, their first album, 1993. So still that sort of era. It was the first winner of the Mercury Prize, Mercury Award. Remember when Mercury 1-to-1 was a phone thing? It's now 4 generations later, EE. First winner of the Mercury Prize, Screamadelica, Moving On Up. It's got this wonderful gospel choir, anthemic, feel good. It's a positive, I found you, I found life. Everything's going to be okay. When I was sort of sitting in traffic yesterday, coming back from Cornwall, everything was okay. I'll pick a Britpop one next week, but this week, because I was stuck in traffic and it made me feel good. And these songs are about making us enjoy driving.
Right.
Moving On Up by Primal Scream is my winner this week.
Can't argue with that. Neil Clifford.
I was thinking of my learned colleague in Spain having his little week dancing holiday. And I was thinking, when was the first time I went to Spain? And when we all left school in 83, we all planned a trip and we saved up our money on the YTS scheme. And my mate had a Fiat Uno company car because he worked in the Fiat garage. And another mate had a 2.3 gear Mark Cortina.
Yeah.
2.3 gear. So eight of us.
Two-tone or not? Two-tone or
Two-tone, vinyl roof in green.
Cologne V6, yeah.
Oh, it's a fantastic car. So 8 of us drove to the south of France, ended up in a campsite in the south of France called Cavalier, a little place called Cavalier. Never been back.
I've been there. I've bloody been there.
Yeah.
That's near Gassin, Ramatuelle, isn't it?
We put our tent
It's just round the corner from Saint-Tropez, just round the
Yeah,
corner from
Ramatuelle.
Saint-Tropez.
Yeah.
That's right. And we thought, we're going to have an amazing 2 weeks in the south of France. And we went into the campsite bar and it was like 900 francs for a bottle of beer. And we thought, fuck this, we're going to have to go to Spain. So we packed up the tents, didn't even stay there a night, and drove through the night to Lloret de Mar. And we ended up at a campsite called Camping Canyelles, which still exists if you Google it, Lloret de Mar. And we walked into the bar. This was the following day. And the first song, this is genuinely true, the first song that was playing in this little bar was a track called I Believe in Miracles by the Jackson Sisters.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I kid you not, that is to me still the best dance track ever been written. Mid-70s, 75, 76, New York. Play the extended version. It is magnificent. And then I danced to that song because, in Portsmouth, all you did is sort of dance for 15 years from that point in 1984. Jackson Sisters, I Believe in Miracles.
Brilliant.
Love it.
Camping
I'm writing it down
Canyelles.
now. Jackson Sisters. Okay.
I'd have danced to that.
Hey,
Is it Nero's on the pier in South?
Yeah. Then it became Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
We want to know what's playing in Beefer, Chris.
Do you know what? I can't really remember too much, but what I can say is the sound systems in these nightclubs now, it's worth going there just to experience it. It's a physical experience. It's so loud. It punches you in the solar plexus, and they're quite formulaic. And I can't do the 7 a.m. thing, but they build and they have the drop bit, and then everyone waits. There's this massive pause in the crowd. They wait for it to hit, and when it hits, everyone just starts whooping with joy. I've got no idea what the name of any of the music, and if you start shazamming it, you probably get thrown out. But it was deeply impressive, and they kept talking about this bloke called Fat Boy's on. I'm like, who's fucking Fat Boy? Well, turns out he's got Slim on the end of his name, where he had Fat Boy. He had Slim on the end of his name, but we knew him. He just goes as Flat Boy now, but he had a Slim bit when I was younger. I had no idea what his name was until then. But I'll do mine quickly now. This did age me. So I had my headphones on the Ryanair on the way out there. That was interesting. The police did meet us for the behaviour of some of the other guests on the plane when we landed in Ibiza. And I was listening. I like listening to tunes that remind me of summer holidays when I'm going to land. I like listening to stuff. So all these other the boys I was with, younger than me, they're probably listening to their cool music and all the new stuff I know nothing about. But there's a summer tune that when I hear the bass line to it at the beginning of it, it makes me think it's summer. It's incredibly popular. It's pretty naff, but I think it's one of the great summer pop songs ever. And I think it's Wham's Club Tropicana.
Oh,
whenever I hear it, I just think it's and so these lads, that's what you're listening to. I went, do I have to admit that? And I've gone, Wham's Club Tropicana, the most uncool thing. But everyone just goes, what great tune. I love it. It's a great tune.
Netflix Wham documentary, worth a watch. Brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Just how uncool I am.
I haven't got an exciting story, but I'll add it onto the playlist. But it's Blink 182, which is a very sort of young band, but it's I Miss You, and it's a super good song.
Great band.
Good band.
Very slow, a bit of a tearjerker there, Ed. But if you're feeling
it is, but it's not that slow. That one, it's good. It's a good song.
But he's sitting in the chair of reflection in the
he is.
It's good.
I want to say a big thank you to my fellow co-hosts, Edward Lovett, Neil Clifford, Chris Cooper, and Manish Pandey. And I'm going to say goodbye to this lovely car park in Bala and now head over to Blighton Park, where I'll continue driving the Tuthill 911K, which has exploded my eardrums for the most of today. I'm sorry if I wasn't very loud. Probably would make the podcast better if I wasn't loud. But a huge thank you to my fellow guests, and we'll see you or hear from you next week.